Good evening. I trust you had a fruitful day. I do not say happy, though I'm sure it has been a happy one. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Buddha, the blessed, noble, and fully self-awakened. So this evening, it's a bit of a revision, but this is a very dense discourse. It's the exposition of the elements, but we come across a certain character, as we do with most of these. So we'll read the opening paragraph and see where we are. Now, the Blessed One was wandering in the Magadhan country and eventually arrived at Rajagaha. So he's back in the country just above the Ganges, and Rajgir is the royal town, the city, the main city. And there he went to the pot of Bhagava and said to him, "If it is not inconvenient for you, Bhagava, I will stay one night in your workshop. It's not inconvenient for me, venerable sir, but there's a homeless one already staying there. If he agrees, then stay as long as you like." Now there was a clansman named Pukusati, who had gone forth from the home life into homelessness out of faith in the Blessed One, and on that occasion was already staying in the potter's workshop. Now, Pukusati seems to have been the king of Takasila. Takasila is right up in the north of India, and the main city was Taxila, which was at that time a very famous place of learning. They call it the university, and seems to have established in 1000 BC. So we're talking a very old establishment where they taught seemingly not only religious things, but medicine, chemistry, and other forms of learning. And what happened was he had visited Magadha, met the king there, Bimbisara. Bimbisara explained the Dharma to him, and he was so taken by it that within a short length of time, he had given up the throne and shaved off his hair and taken on the ochre robe, and was now in search of the Buddha to join the order. It's quite remarkable, really. Now, the Blessed One is here on his own. Now, that's in Rajgir. He's here on his own in Rajgir. Now, that would be it's quite strange, really, because he's always got an attendant with him, another monk. The last 20 years of his life was his cousin Ananda, or he would have a group of monks with him. Here he's completely on his own. And what it says was that he had a vision. He intuited that Pukusati was there by his clairvoyance. And he'd gone to see him because he intuited that the man was very close to at least a high level of insight. And as we shall see, he does attain it. So the Blessed One enters this the potter's workshop, spread some grass at the end, and sat down, folding his leg crosswise, setting his body erect, and establishing mindfulness. Then the Blessed One spent most of the night in meditation, and the Venerable Pukusati also spent most of the night seated. Then the Blessed One thought to himself, "This clansman conducts himself in a way that inspires confidence. Suppose I were to question him." So here we have the fully liberated one living in a workshop, having spread a bit of grass on the floor, and is sitting there quite comfortably. So he doesn't have much pride. So he asks Pukusati, "Who have you gone forth? Who have you gone forth with? Because who's he taken ordination with? And whose Dharma do you profess?" "Well, there is a recluse Gautama, the son of the Sakyans, who went forth from the Sakyan clan." So that's Buddha, of course. "Now a good report is spread of him." And this is what we chant in the morning. The Blessed One is accomplished, fully enlightened, perfect in true knowledge and conduct. sublime, knower of the worlds, incomparable, leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened and blessed. So, having said that, he says, I've gone forth under the Blessed One, and I profess the Dharma of the Blessed One. Now, where is this Blessed One? Asked the Buddha. Where's he living? Well, there's a city in the north country called Savatthi, and that's where he is. So Savathi's up north in the kingdom of Kosala. That's where Anathapindika gave him that field of gold. But Bhikkhu, have you ever seen the Blessed One before? Would you recognize him? No, I've never seen him, nor would I recognize him. So the Blessed One thought to himself, this clansman has gone forth from the home life to homelessness under me. Supposing I were to teach him the Dharma. So yes, so I will teach you some Dharma. I'm sure he didn't quite say that way. I'm sure he said in such a way that he sort of led the bhikkhu to understand further about the teaching. And he said that a person, so now we get the teaching. And this is what it's, and this is it. So he says, a person consists of the 6 elements, 6 bases of contact, 18 kinds of mental exploration, and he has 4 foundations. So that's what this discourse is about. The 6 elements, the 6 bases of contact, the 18 kinds of mental exploration, and the 4 foundations. The tides of conceiving do not sweep over one who has stood upon these foundations. The tides here are, of course, the ogres, which is another word for the asava, the taints, the oozings. And when the tides of conceiving no longer sweep over one, that person is called a sage at peace. One should not neglect wisdom, preserve truth, cultivate relinquishment, and train in peace. So those are the 4 establishments. Those are the 4 foundations. Not neglect wisdom, preserve the truth, cultivate relinquishment, giving up, and train for peace. So there we have this teaching, which is now going to be drawn out. The 6 elements, the 6 bases of contact, 18 kinds of mental exploration, and then these 4 foundations, not to neglect wisdom, preserve the truth, cultivate relinquishment, and train for peace. Okay, so then, of course, he starts off with the 6 elements, we've done the 4 elements fairly in fair detail: the earth element, the water element, fire element, air element. But there's also added, not found there often, space element and consciousness element. So we'll come to that later. And then he goes on to the bases of contact. So these are your basic sense bases, and with the mind. Don't forget the mind as a sense. So a person consists of a person. It's in other words, there's no such thing as a person when you begin to look at a person and draw out all the things that make a person. You find that a person is a concept. So he always says that a person consists of 6 bases. With reference to what was this said? Well, there's the eye base and the ear base, the nose base, the tongue base, the base of body contact, and the base of mind contact. So there's only 6 bases, right? The 5 ordinary senses and the mind itself. Now, with reference to what is this said, a person consists of 18 kinds of mental exploration. So now, on seeing a form with the eye, one explores a form productive of joy, productive of grief, and productive of indifference. Okay, so in other words, once you have contact with something, there is always the next step of deciding whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And then there comes that reaction, but we're not at the reaction stage, we're just at the feeling stage. Now it says joy and grief, probably an equanimity, translates upeka as equanimity, but it also means indifference. Now because the person is deluded, right, we're talking about an ordinary person like me and you, deluded, then this wouldn't so much be equanimity, which is a high state of mind, but more to do with a sort of indifference with feelings that are neutral. And of course, that applies to the six senses. It does also to the mind. So these are the 18 kinds of mental exploration. So it's always this business of deconstructing what we experience, trying to find out how things come to be. That's one of his favorite phrases, to see and know, to know and see, if I were translating it literally, to know and see the way things have come to be. In other words, process. And then he goes on to the four foundations. So with reference to what is this, so we've done it, we're at the foundation of wisdom, of truth, of relinquishment, and of peace. And so now, how should one not neglect wisdom? So there are these 6 elements. And it might be good for us to go through them again, even though, because it's quite a while since we've done them, and just to, as a way of reflecting about this body. The power of reflection. So for instance, what is the earth element? The earth element may be either internal or external. So it's the way we experience the earth element inside us and outside us, wherever we touch, which is hard and solid. Whatever is internal belonging to us is solid, solidified, and clung to. So this clinging, of course, is where the delusion arises. Head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, large intestines, small intestines, contents of the stomach, feces, and whatever else is internally belonging to oneself, which is solid, solidified, and clung to. Now, both the internal earth element and the external element are simply earth element. And what should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus: this is not mine, it is I am not, this I am not, and this is not myself. So if you take a very simple exercise of, like I'm sitting here now and I'm feeling my knee and the bone of my knee, and I ask myself, you know, what do I know about this bone? So I'm told by biologists, etc., it's made up of this and that. But what do I actually personally, directly, subjectively know about this bone? The only thing I know is the touch of it. In my mind, I see bones as white, but that's because I've seen bones in pictures, and I might have seen bones of dogs or something. But actually, this bone, all I know of it is that it is hard. So the whole distinction between what we know through our objective science and how we actually experience the world subjectively. Okay, these are two very different worlds. I mean, they connect, but it's good to remember that it's the subjective world which is creating, or the relationship to the subjective world which is creating the problem. And it's just recognizing that this sense of I am this body, actually knows nothing about bones apart from the fact that they're hard. And there's a picture in my mind of my skeleton, my skull, but that's a picture, right? I've never seen my skeleton, and frankly, I don't want to see it. It'd be bad news. Now, you see, when one sees this with proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with the earth element and dispassionate towards the earth element. So as soon as you realize that whatever this bone is, it's not me, it's not mine. There's a sense of me is in the body, but I am not the body. then of course, when that insight is made at a deep enough level, then there's no anxiety about the body. There's no anxiety about death. That's where we're leading ourselves to. So these are put to us as for reflection, and the reflection leads us at least to right view. And this right view then is reinforced by a direct understanding through our personal experience. And that's where the liberation comes. How are we doing for time? Okay. So here we have the water element. So again, it's just going through all the different things that are water elements: watery, phlegm, pus, blood, fat, tears, spittle, snot, oil of the joints, urine, and all that sort of stuff. So all that is watery. And it's that business of cohesion, elasticity, all right, fluidity. But again, whenever we look at any part of that, such as the saliva in our mouths, see, you know, where does it come from? Do you make it? What's it made of? You know, but it's there in the mouth. You can feel it. You can feel it. You might see it if you spit it out. But generally speaking, we know very little about our saliva. So it's not me. It's not mine. This is not myself. The fire element is what is fiery. It's what is eaten, drunk, consumed, tasted, completely digested, and that's all the heaty business. Now, what do we know about the sense of warmth, the sense of being overheated, the sense of being cold in the body? See, it's just a feeling, isn't it? You know. So when we see this with proper wisdom, you see, you become disenchanted. Now, for instance, when you feel cold, there's that reaction of closing yourself up, of holding yourself, you know, putting some more clothes on. Well, of course, one has to take care of the body. But if you lose your fear of cold, as I have found here, at least a little bit of it, and you relax into the cold, you open up to the cold, you embrace the cold, the body takes care of itself. It warms itself up, at least to a degree. I wouldn't do this in minus 20, you understand. And then there's the air element. So these, of course, are airy and they clung to, you know. So they're, of course, the upgoing winds and the downgoing winds. We shan't say any more about that. The winds in the belly and the winds all through the limbs, the in-breath and the out-breath. These are the internal air element. What is airy? What is fine? Movement. Now, that's what we really experience, isn't it? With anything that's with the breath, all you can experience is that sense of something flowing, something moving. So again, it's not me nor mine. Now, the space element is all those little holes, such as in the ears and the nostrils, doors of the mouth, whereby things are consumed and excreted from below and all that sort of stuff. And that's all space. Now, are we the space as well? Like when I close my mouth, am I the space in my mouth? Am I the space in my ears? Yeah, there might be a lot of space in my skull too, for all I know. So then and again, this is not mine. This I am not, and this is not myself. So these are meant to be reflected upon, to actually perceive, at least at a conceptual level, they're true. And then finally, there's consciousness. So we haven't come across consciousness as an element, but it's that which cognizes. In other words, it knows. What does it know? This is pleasant, this is unpleasant, and this is neutral. And this is dependent on contact. So here now, having discussed the main elements, he's now talking about the process which is described in dependent origination. And he starts off with feeling, but he points out that it's in dependence on contact. To be felt as pleasant, that there arises a pleasant feeling. So when you see something that's beautiful, what you actually see is just the form and the color. It's then perceived as something pleasant, something beautiful, brings joy. And then, of course, you begin to realize that when the contact is over, that which is dependent on the contact, the feeling of joy, disappears. So, and in that way, he's pointing to the impermanency of things. And it's the same, of course, with painful feelings, and the same with neutral feelings. Now, just as from the contact and friction of two fire sticks, heat is generated and fire is produced, rubbing the two sticks together. And with the separation of disjunction of these two fire sticks, the corresponding heat ceases and subsides. So without that consciousness, there's no contact, there's no feeling. So these are like the two sticks that have come together. So now there only remains this equanimity. So now, before we had indifference, with what was neutral, but now we've come to equanimity because we're undermining that sense of identity and ownership of what we're experiencing, of everything we're experiencing. Yeah. So there remains only equanimity, purified and bright, malleable, wieldy, and radiant. Supposing a skilled goldsmith or his apprentice were to prepare a furnace, heat up the crucible, take some gold with tongues, and put it into the crucible. From time to time he would blow on it, time to time sprinkle water over it, and from time to time he would just look on. That gold would become refined, well refined, completely refined, faultless, rid of dross, malleable, wieldy, and radiant. Then whatever kind of ornament he wished to make from it, whether a gold chain or earrings or necklace or golden garland, it would serve his purpose. So too, there then remains only equanimity, purified and bright, malleable, wieldy, and radiant. So the process there is to contemplate the six bases, the six sense bases, how that contact with consciousness produces our experience of pleasant and unpleasant, and that when we become dispassionate towards that, when we're no longer clinging to it, then we achieve this equanimity. So we can leave it there for this evening, and later on we'll go on to finish the discourse. So it's a bit of a revision for us, the four elements, but also a slightly different way of looking at it, and to have it connected with, clearly connected with dependent origination, which is the Buddha's psychology of how we create suffering and how we bring suffering to an end. So with these reflections, I am sure, without any doubt, that all confusion has been dispelled, and that you will be compelled to practice more diligently, to the point where you liberate yourself sooner rather than later. So we can do a bit of practice.